Jack Harris was a man of extraordinary passion. Growing up in the small town of Greenville, football was his life. From sunrise to sunset, he spent every waking hour on the field, dreaming of one day playing for the NFL. But fate had other plans. At the age of 24, just as he was about to be drafted by a prestigious football team, Jack met with a devastating car accident. The crash left him with multiple injuries, but the worst was yet to come. Both his legs had to be amputated. His world crumbled. Yet, Jack's passion for football was stronger than his despair. Refusing to accept a life confined to a wheelchair, he became the first person to undergo an experimental leg transplant surgery. After months of searching, a pair of legs from an unidentified deceased donor were found, and the operation was a success. The doctors marveled at the medical miracle, but Jack's journey was just beginning. After months of rehabilitation, Jack returned to his home, eager to begin his new normal life. That night, he fell asleep with dreams of running on the football field. But at exactly 3 a.m., he woke up gasping, not in his bed, but lying next to a grave in the middle of an old, overgrown cemetery. The headstone read, "Here lies William Carter, 1986, 2023. Jack's heart pounded in terror. How had he ended up here? He was miles from his house. Shaking, he ran back home, only to collapse on the doorstep in shock. Determined to dismiss the incident as a bad dream, Jack went to bed the next night. But again, at exactly 3 a.m., he found himself in the cemetery, standing next to William Carter's grave. This time he felt his legs trembling, almost as if they were being drawn to the grave by an invisible force. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Suddenly, he saw a faint, shadowy figure standing at the edge of the cemetery. It pointed towards him before vanishing into the darkness. In the following weeks, Jack's life became a waking nightmare. Every night, his legs carried him to strange, horrifying places he never wanted to go. One night, Jack found himself standing at the gates of an abandoned mansion known for its gruesome history. The locals called it Shadow Manor, where the spirits of a murdered family were said to roam. Against his will, his legs walked him inside. Doors creaked open by themselves, and whispers echoed in the empty halls. Jack saw a reflection of a man in a broken mirror, only to realize it wasn't his own. Another night, Jack awoke in the middle of a dense forest, surrounded by eerie wailing sounds. His legs led him deeper and deeper into the woods until he came upon a circle of ghostly apparitions. They seemed to recognize him, or rather, the legs he now possessed, and began chanting in an unearthly language. Jack's most terrifying experience happened when he woke up inside an old amusement park. The carousel turned by itself, and the laughter of children echoed through the air. He saw glimpses of a figure running ahead of him, beckoning him to follow. It led him to a rusted Ferris wheel, where he saw William Carter scratched into one of the seats. Jack's dream of returning to football was shattered. Every time he tried to go to the football field, his legs refused to cooperate. Instead, they dragged him to places steeped in death and despair. He became a prisoner in his own body. Haunted and exhausted, Jack began researching the identity of William Carter. He discovered that William had been a wanderer, exploring haunted and cursed places in search of the supernatural. It seemed his obsession had not ended with his death, and now his legs were continuing the journey through Jack. One night, after a particularly harrowing experience in an underground crypt, Jack had had enough. He stormed into the hospital and begged his surgeon to remove the transplanted legs. "I'd rather be in a wheelchair than live like this. These legs are not mine. They belong to someone who won't let me go," he screamed. The doctors, initially hesitant, eventually agreed. The operation was performed, and Jack's new legs were removed. But just before the anesthesia took hold, Jack swore he heard a whisper. "You can cut them off, Jack, but you'll never outrun me." Jack returned to his wheelchair, believing the nightmare was over. But strange things began to happen. Objects in his house moved on their own. Doors slammed shut. And every night at 3 a.m. he heard footsteps, walking, pacing, coming closer. The spirit of William Carter grew more malevolent, as if enraged by Jack's rejection of the transplant. His encounters became more bizarre, terrifying, and personal. A week after the surgery, Jack noticed something strange in his home. Every mirror in the house began showing faint shadows behind him. At first, he dismissed them as tricks of the light, but one night, the shadow turned into a full figure. It was a tall man with a gaunt face and piercing hollow eyes, William Carter. The spirit didn't speak but pointed toward Jack's legs, or rather, where his legs used to be. Jack tried to smash the mirror, but the figure moved to the next one, and the next. Soon, every reflective surface in the house showed William standing closer and closer to Jack. The mirrors became his nightly terror. He covered them all, but the whispering voice of William would seep through. "You can't hide from me, Jack." Desperate to reclaim his old life, Jack convinced his friends to take him to a football field to watch a local game. As the crowd cheered, Jack felt a rare moment of peace, until the final whistle blew. When he turned to leave, the field transformed. The cheering crowd disappeared, replaced by dense fog rolling across the grass. Jack saw ghostly figures in football uniforms, but their faces were decayed and skeletal. They were playing a strange, slow game. One of the players turned to Jack, his rotting jaw moving as if to say something, but no words came. Suddenly, the ball was kicked toward Jack, and it rolled to a stop at his feet, or where his legs would have been. Jack froze as the players started sprinting toward him in unison, their hollow eyes glowing red. He screamed until he passed out. Determined to put an end to the haunting, Jack revisited the hospital to demand more information about William Carter. A sympathetic nurse revealed that Carter's body had been found in a decrepit motel known for its grisly history. Police had discovered a blood-stained journal in his possession. Jack tracked down the journal, which detailed Carter's obsession with the paranormal. The entries revealed that Carter believed in an ancient curse. Anyone who interfered with a part of his body after his death would be possessed by his spirit. The last entry read, "If my body cannot rest, neither shall theirs. I will live on through them." This revelation sent Jack into a spiral of fear and desperation. Hoping to cleanse himself of the curse, Jack sought help from a local priest renowned for handling exorcisms. The priest agreed to perform a ritual, but as soon as the ceremony began, Jack's wheelchair began to move uncontrollably. His body convulsed as the spirit of William resisted the exorcism. The church's stained glass windows shattered, and a howling wind filled the chapel. The priest screamed, clutching his rosary as Jack's voice twisted into something deep and inhuman. "You cannot free him. He's mine," the voice growled, echoing in the chapel. The ritual failed, leaving Jack even more broken. One night, Jack had a dream, or so he thought. He found himself in a desolate graveyard once again, but this time it was different. The graves were open, their contents spilled onto the ground. He saw William Carter standing in the distance, his body decayed but his eyes burning with an unholy light. William spoke for the first time. "You took my legs, Jack. You used them for your dreams, but you forgot. They were never yours. I lived through you. I ran through you. And now, you'll carry my curse forever." Jack begged for forgiveness, but William only smiled, raising a bony finger toward Jack. Suddenly, the ground beneath Jack opened, and he was dragged into the earth. He woke up screaming, his hands covered in dirt. Jack's final ordeal occurred when he was inexplicably drawn to an abandoned football stadium. Despite his lack of legs, his wheelchair moved on its own, guiding him through the eerie corridors. The sound of cleats echoed in the empty space. In the center of the field, he saw William Carter, now fully manifest as a ghostly figure. Surrounding him were dozens of shadowy players, other victims of William's curse. They closed in on Jack, whispering in unison, "Run, Jack, run like you wanted to, but you'll never escape us." Jack screamed, trying to wheel himself away, but the spirits grabbed him, dragging him toward the center of the field. The last thing he remembered was the sensation of running, on William's legs. Months later, Local authorities discovered Jack's empty wheelchair in the abandoned stadium. His body was never found, but rumors spread quickly. Some said they saw Jack's ghost wandering the graveyard at 3 a.m., while others claimed to hear the sound of running cleats echoing through the stadium at night. The most chilling tale came from a group of teenagers who broke into the stadium one Halloween. They swore they saw a ghostly football game being played, and among the players was Jack Harris, running endlessly on William Carter's cursed legs.